Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. All right. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for April 20th, 2021, starting at 6:30 p.m. here. All right. So we'll open with the public hearing. This is on new on-premise all alcohol liquor license application for High Tea LLC, also known as the Wenham Tea House at 4 Monument Street. And I'll move to open the public hearing. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Catherine, I.
Gary, aye. All right, so the public hearing is open. Is there anyone raising your hand in the chat room or like to speak? Perhaps I see Harriet Davis there from WVIS.
Yes, indeed, Gary. We're very much in support of this liquor application.
Gary, you need to read the
Add the full motion. I see it up on the screen now. All right. So Town of Wenham Board of Selectmen public hearing, application for new liquor license. The Board of Selectmen of the Town of Wenham will hold a public hearing related to the application by Wenham Tea House, 4 Monument Street, for an on-premises all alcohol beverages retail liquor license. The public hearing will be held on Tuesday, April 20th, 2021, 6:30 p.m. electronically via Zoom. Any inquiries or questions may be directed to the Town Administrator's Office by calling 978-468-5520 extension 2. The public is encouraged to attend and participate, and this notice was appeared in the Chronicle and Transcript on April 8th, 2021. Now we're formal. So do we have anyone else in the chat room, Jackie?
So can we assume there's no one here from High Tea LLC?
Oh, yes, they're there. Melissa and Brendan, they're muted. They need to unmute themselves.
I'd just love to hear a little bit about
Right.
what's being proposed there for that we're.
Hello.
Good evening, Melissa and Brendan.
Hello.
Hi there.
So would you like to tell us about your application and what your plans are for the Wenham Tea House?
No, it's you.
We plan to, as soon as the renovations are done, we plan to operate much like the tea house has been operated in the past. We'll be offering breakfast and lunch, as you can see right here, as well as some days we'll have afternoon tea, Sunday brunch, and then eventually would like to expand to Friday and Saturday night dinner. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. We haven't quite figured everything out. We do have submitted a sample menu kind of based on what we think we'll be doing, but that's fluid once we get in there and see how that kitchen operates. But I think I've said everything that we've written down. I don't know if it might be easier if you had any questions for us.
Catherine?
I have a couple pretty easy ones. First of all, I'm very excited. You're certainly well-known restaurateurs in the area, and it's very exciting to have you coming to Wenham. So good luck and good news, and welcome. So I have one question. Do you have an estimate of when you're expecting you might be open for business?
That's a good question. I think that everybody in the town of Wenham, is anxious as we are to go in. And I think that there have been some setbacks that, have been both very sad and unavoidable. And, we're just feeling our way through with permitting. But there is some work to be done still. So it's hard to give an estimate because I hate to do that and then have us not open on that time frame. We had originally hoped to be open by March 1st, and we're well beyond that, we realize. So if all falls into place, we're hoping for, a late spring, early summer opening. But there's so many things that have to line up in order for that to happen.
So my other question is really more procedural, and the answer may be here. We do have a lot of information, but relative to the liquor license, I believe I read somewhere that the serving of liquor is prohibited before noon on Sunday.
Yep.
You'll be open before noon on Sunday. So should we presume that you just wouldn't be serving liquor until?
Yes, we'll abide by all the blue laws of the state. This was just a guideline and there were only so many spaces you could fill in. We also won't be serving alcohol till 10 o'clock every single night. But my understanding in applying for this liquor license, we worded it the same way the former owner did, because it seems complicated to have to ask permission or apply for a one-day license if we were to book an event. So it seemed more efficient to have the license be all encompassing right from the get-go. We're not going to be open on Monday and Tuesday nights unless there's a special event. But if there were a special event, I know that there are some that we do for the WVIS and happy to do them, but say they wanted to have a wine tasting dinner or fundraiser, we would have to apply. The way I read the application is that if we didn't do it this way and ask for it, all at once, that if we were doing something, just as an example for WVIS, and it was a wine tasting fundraiser dinner on a Monday night, that we'd have to apply for a single day license to cover that, since we wouldn't normally be operating for those hours.
Well, I believe it would also give you flexibility should over time you decide to expand your hours or your offerings or the days that you're open, having this kind of a license, which the restaurant before you had, would give you the flexibility without having to do anything different. So that does make sense. Okay, thank you. Those are really my only questions.
Back to that blue law. Absolutely, we wouldn't serve alcohol until we're allowed on Saturday and Sunday.
Okay. Great. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Very well. So if Tom, you'll confirm that, I think the schedule going forward on this is to also do the food license and the liquor license, the actual vote from the Board of Selectmen, either next week or the week after, as soon as we get all the permits cleared.
Correct. You can, Mr. Chairman, you can do the common victual license, which is technically the restaurant license that the Board of Selectmen has to approve.
All right. So any other comments, Catherine?
No, that's it for me for now. I may
Right.
have more later next time, but that's it for me
So
for now.
Let's plan, we'll keep the permitting process ongoing here, and then we'll address both the liquor and the victualling license together on one night, hopefully in a week or two from now. How's that sound, Catherine?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, thank you, Melissa and Brandon. And
Thank
we'll
you.
be in
Thank you.
touch shortly. Thank you,
Thank
Harriet.
you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
All right, so Jackie, just check one more time. There's no other public inputs for the public hearing?
Nothing in the chat at this time.
All right. Then I will move to close the public hearing on the all alcohol liquor license application for High Tea LLC. Do I hear a second?
Second,
And the roll call vote?
Catherine, yes.
Gary, yes. All right, public hearing is closed. And as we said, we'll plan either next week or the week after, as soon as we get all the permitting set. All right, on to next item. Public input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, back to Jackie one more time. Now, is anybody in the chat room for general public input? Hands raised in the chat room, anybody?
They have a chance to speak.
All right. Very well, Catherine. Then I propose we'll just press on past public input onto the rest of the agenda.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, have some announcements for this evening. Just a reminder that a hydrant flushing began today on April 20th, and it will continue through May 7th of this year. It'll be conducted between the hours of 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. You should be advised that you may experience a drop in water pressure at your homes, as well as some discoloration of the water during this process. It's only temporary for the discoloration and does not indicate a problem with your water. If your water does become discolored, turn on an outside faucet to clear the water line before doing any laundry or cleaning. The water department will continue to monitor the water quality during this period to ensure that the water remains safe to drink. The town apologizes for any inconvenience this may cause, but flushing is an important part of our system maintenance and generally is done annually. Daily updates will be provided on our town's website. If you have any questions, please contact our water superintendent, Eric Mansfield, at 978-468-5520, extension 6, with any questions or concerns. Thank you. Just announcing that we still have a full-time opening in our highway department for a driver operator. You're performing manual work in operating our trucks and vehicles in support of construction, maintenance, and repair operations for our highway department. A Class B CDL and hoisting license is required, or you must acquire within 1 year of your start date. Please visit wenhamma.gov/jobs for more information, or call the highway department at 978-468-5520, extension 6. Board and committee openings that we have going through the end of our fiscal year. If you're interested, please submit a letter of interest in serving through our appointment request Google form found at wenhamma.gov/volunteer, or by sending an email to the attention of our board at nroebuck@wenhamma.gov. The commissions and boards that we have openings for are the Cemetery Commission, Conservation Commission, Council on Aging, Hamilton Wenham Community Access and Media, our Cultural Council, our District Commission, the Historic District Commission, sorry, Harriet, I know you're watching there, the Iron Rail Commission, the Open Space and Recreation Committee, and our Zoning Board of Appeals. The warrant hearing for our annual town meeting is going to be held on Monday, April 26th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. The warrant book, including our proposed budget, and may repeat a balanced budget with no override, is available online and mailed to your households by April 24th. More information you may find at wenhamma.gov/townmeeting. Reminder to all our voters, the Wenham Annual Town Meeting will be held at Pingree Park on Saturday, May 1st at 1 p.m. Voter check-in begins at 12 p.m. Parking is at the Pingree Park through Route 1A Main Street entrance and at the library. Drop-off is only at the Porter Street entrance. Contact the Council on Aging for any mobility concerns and for a reserved parking pass. All our voters, please remember to bring a face covering and wear it there, and bring your warrant books to town meeting. Further information may be found at wenhamma.gov/townmeeting. Just putting up there was the parking plan to come in through Main Street, and then you have excess parking over at the library and the drop-off entrance at Porter Street. We are still being this year in a tent, and we had a meeting on our setup this morning, and we're expecting excellent weather and an easy pass-through for your parking. Our annual town election is held after town meeting on Thursday, May 6th, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Town Hall. April 30th is the last day to request an absentee ballot by mail. And May 5th at noon is the deadline for absentee voting in person. On the ballot, we have a group of boards and committees and individual positions, including one position at the Board of Assessors for a 3-year term, Board of Health, one position for 3 years, Select Board, Board of Selectmen, one position, 3-year term, the Hamilton Wenham Library Trustees, 2 positions at large for 3-year terms, the Regional School Committee, 2 positions for 3-year terms, the individual position of moderator for a 3-year term, 1 position on our planning board for a 5-year term. The Water Commission has 1 position for a 3-year term, and our Housing Authority have 2 positions, 1 a 5-year term and 1 a 3-year term. Additional information will be found at wenhamma.gov/elections. All right, Mr. Chairman, let's go to some updates on reports. I have just 1 minute, please. First of all, we met earlier last week, And we will not be doing this year any type of 4th of July celebration due to COVID. We will be checking back in later in the summer to determine if we'll be doing anything based in the fall, based on our conditions with COVID. Next, which I brought up to the budget hearing regarding our local aid numbers coming through from the House Ways and Means Committee. The town will be seeing a net increase of $107 from the governor's proposal. What it is that we will be seeing a reduction of $102 in public library aid, but an increase of $209 in reimbursement payments for state-owned land in Wenham. The good news is the regional school district is proposed to receive an additional $48,866 in regional school transportation assistance. This is actually overall good news for us, which means that we will not be getting a reduction in the local aid that the governor's proposed, and we did propose conservatively on local aid. So we'll be in very good shape on that revenue number going forth into town meeting. Number of other areas. One is I want to thank the town of Hamilton and our team for applying for and receiving a regional pilot project grant award to support economic recovery. What this would be a $50,000 grant to our two communities to work on an integrated marketing program with Hamilton for our businesses that may have been hurt during COVID. So thank you to both our Hamilton team and the Wenham team for putting this together, and we'll be getting additional information as we go further on with. Also, we are getting a little more information regarding the federal grant money based on COVID-19, which is known as the American Rescue Plan Act. The information that we were just recently submitted was how to set up the funding mechanism and registration with the federal government on when we receive the money. Because as you know, everything is electronic, so we have to set that up. But that's the latest information that we have received on that. And I believe our total number is approximately about $1.5 million, and that can be used for COVID expenses, infrastructure, broadband, but we still don't have all the details yet on how that will be expended and what the reporting mechanism is. Another COVID-related item was based on Memorial Day. The Veterans Committee this year is also, unfortunately, to be eliminating the parade, but they will be holding their typical ceremonies at 10:15 a.m. at the Cheeseman Memorial and at 11 a.m. at the Veterans Memorial. But unfortunately, there will not be a parade again this year. And we are looking at options of how we register to attend. When I started here, we had the Wreaths of Across America program, and we had a way to register that for contract tracing purposes. So we are, from what I understand, we'll be talking with them further regarding that. And last, I want to introduce, she's not here, but our newest member of our team, Kara Campbell, will be our new conservation coordinator, part-time position. She comes with a excellent background working in planning and conservation areas for the town of Winthrop, the city of Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. And I'm pleased to have her come join the team. So when we have a chance, I'll be able to introduce her to the board members. But we thank you, Kara, and we're looking very forward to having her being a part of us. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, Catherine?
No, I'm all set. Thank you. Good
One-
job, Tom.
Thank you, Catherine.
And Tom, one clarification for the public. So the no 4th of July is a coordinated decision with Hamilton and Wenham, correct?
Correct.
Yes. So for the public out there, there'll be nothing in either town to keep it safe. Thank you. All right, Mary Beth Tang, COVID-19 update. Numbers are looking better, hopefully.
They are looking about the same, actually, as last week. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This past week, we were in the yellow zone with 20 cases over the preceding 2 weeks. And I just ran the report, and it looks like for this week, when the numbers come out on Thursday, we will be at 21 cases for the period of time from the 4th of April to the 17th of April. So that's obviously a net change of 1 case. However, in the past week, we've had 18 new cases. So you can anticipate in 2 weeks' time, we might be in a different position. So 11 of those cases have been over at Gordon College. So definitely an uptick at the college, and 7 cases in town. The total number of cases now is up to 290 confirmed, with another 29 probable. So that's where things are. We'll have to wait and see what happens with any travel related increase. We'll just have to see what that is. I will say that for families in town to know, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed just made a big announcement today that for students who are within 6 feet of someone who is confirmed positive in the classroom or on the bus, if they are wearing their mask and they are 3 feet or greater from the person with infection, they will not need to quarantine. So I was making some phone calls and email communication with a number of families today. So that is a big change. Some of that comes from the fact that we are just not seeing transmission in the school. Even when there is someone with infection, the fact that we have the mitigation strategies of the ventilation and the face coverings, as well as hand hygiene and encouraging people to stay home when they're not feeling well, is working. So when we have been quarantining individuals who've been less than 6 feet, they have not tested positive and have not gone on to develop infection. So this is a big shift, a big change. And I would just encourage everyone to continue to be vigilant in the use of their mitigation strategies. As I say every single time, stay home when you're sick, stay 6 feet away from those not of your household, wear a well-fitting face covering, wash your hands, try not to be touching your face with unwashed hands, and get your vaccine as quickly as you can. Everyone in the state of Massachusetts above the age of 16 or 16 and above are now eligible. If you have technology issues and you need some assistance in booking an appointment, please call us at the Board of Health. Jackie can put the phone number in the chat for those of you who need that phone number, because I don't have that memorized, unfortunately. I think it's a 781 number, Jackie. And I think that's it. I'm open. Oh, no, we're going to use the Board of Health number. So that's 978-468-5520. And the Board of Health is, you press the number 4. Any questions that I can address?
Catherine?
Yes, just a couple. Thank you, Mary Beth. So just so that I understand, students on school buses who are close, who are within 6 feet?
Yeah, so Catherine, I'll give you a firm example. The designation that they've made today only applies to the classroom or the school bus. So this does not apply to the sports team or an extracurricular activity, and it does not apply during lunchtime. At those times, students should be 6 feet. So if you are in a classroom right now, for instance, at the middle school, the desks are 3 feet apart. So if you and I are fellow classmates and I have infection and you're sitting 3 feet away, you're sitting in your desk 3 feet away from me, as long as I have my mask on and you have your mask on, you would not need to quarantine. That is a big shift. Just earlier today, I was calling your family to say, Catherine, you were sitting too close to me. You were not 6 feet, and so you'll need to quarantine. That is changing as of today.
So does it change the requirement for testing as well? So that close contact is, I guess, not really a close contact anymore, but the person that was a close contact does not have to quarantine or be tested?
That is correct.
Okay,
and
thank you.
I will say that, in the middle and high school over the last 2 weeks, with more students in at closer distance, we have identified a number of people for quarantine and testing, and none of those tests came back positive. None of those individuals became ill. And, we're a small microcosm within the state. I think they've been getting lots of data about that. And so that's the reason for the change.
Okay.
It
And
was-
then just, I'm sorry, one more quick question. So this, I should probably know this, but I'm guessing then that the Gordon students are all back on campus?
They
Is that
are
right?
back on campus. Yes,
Okay.
they had a break over Easter, but are
Mhm.
now back on campus
Okay.
in class.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me. Sorry. Thank you.
Well, Mary Beth, that's good news that so long as we use the mitigation efforts in the school, that it seems to be working well. So hopefully the public at large listens to that and continues to follow your strategies. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Will those people who were previously close contacts still be notified if they were within 3 feet of someone who tests positive?
Everett, per the new guidance that's come out today, they would not be notified because they're not being considered close contacts at this time because we're not seeing them go on to develop infection. So if it's a classroom or a school bus, the answer would be no. If it's lunchtime and less than 6 feet without a face covering on, or if it's an extracurricular activity or a sport activity, then we would be looking to identify the close contacts, and that would be anyone less than 6 feet. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mary Beth.
Thank you.
All right. Chairman's update. I don't have much other than to encourage everybody to show up for a town meeting on the 1st and for the election on the 6th. Over to you, Catherine. You have anything on the update?
I don't, except to echo your sentiments, Gary. Show up at town meeting
Yeah,
and the election.
we need the quorum, right?
Yeah, yes, we do.
And we should add too, hopefully this will be the last one under the tent. We'll see, but we're getting there. All right, so a consent agenda entails many meeting minutes. The draft motions move or approve all the items in the consent agenda, including open session meeting minutes from May 14th, 2020, May 19th, 2020, September 15th, 2020, October 20th, 2020, October 22nd, 2020, December 15th, 2020, December 17th, 2020. That's joint with FinCom, Hamilton Board of Selectmen, FinCom, and the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee. January 5th, 2021, January 5th, 2021, joint with Hamilton Board of Selectmen. January 9th, 2021, the FY22 budget meeting with FinCom, January 19th, 2021. Also executive sessions from May 19th, 2020, June 2nd, 2020. And then with the series of informational sessions when we had just the one select board member from January 26th, February 2nd, February 9th, February 16th, February 23, March 2, March 9, March 16, March 23, March 30, and April 6, 2021. And the executive session minutes of May 19, 2020 and June 2nd, 2020 to be released as well. Comments, questions, Catherine?
Well, I'll just make a comment. It's a lot of minutes.
Yes.
And it's an interesting combination of minutes that I was the clerk for, so I've already seen and reviewed, and many minutes, of course, that I didn't attend. I do understand, though, in this situation, someone will correct me if I'm wrong, that since there are just two of us and these minutes need to be approved, that I can vote for them, vote on this motion, even though I was absent from the meeting as a sort of a clerical function. So I just wanted to make sure that that was the case. And then I guess I can only say I'm really glad that these will all get approved.
Yes,
at least-
likewise. You know, there were some of the early ones that I wasn't the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
So I think through just the numbers game here that the two of us can get all this paperwork done and behind us then.
Okay.
So that's the motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. And the roll call vote.
Catherine, aye.
Gary, aye. So those long list of meeting minutes are approved and certain ones for release as well. And thank you especially to Catherine Tinsley that does all the major work on getting these minutes up to speed and done. Thank you. All right, so tonight, I'm not sure we had a formal presentation or forwarding from the Human Rights Committee, but we have, I believe it's Everett with us tonight to speak on a proposal that came out of his school efforts and on the land acknowledgement for Indigenous people in Hamilton, Wenham. So Everett, are you on?
Yes.
All right.
Actually, Gary, it's
All right,
Anna here.
yes,
Do you
Anna's
mind?
here too. Go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, no, I was just going to actually introduce Everett and offer a little context about how this ended up in the Wenham Select Board meeting tonight. So Everett reached out to me as sort of someone to help shepherd through the municipal process, knowing that I would be supportive. So I've sort of been the grown-up sponsor, if you will, but really the work then the idea belongs to Everett. So I just wanted to offer some context for how this came to be here. So we've been working on this together. And I've also ended up doing quite a bit of research for another webinar that the Human Rights Coalition is hosting later in the summer. So this part of it really is Everett's work product. And I have nothing more than sort of the adult champion of it, so to speak. So, and just for clarity, the Social Justice Club is sort of a high school club, not part of the coalition itself. And Everett is, I believe, one of the officers of the group. So we've been working on this together, and Everett prepared this pretty awesome presentation. I helped a little bit with some work and have had some conversations with a member of the Massachusetts tribe. So without further ado, I will introduce EJ Everett to take it from here. And that's how we came to be here tonight. Thank you so much for hearing us out.
Thank you, Anna. So Everett, why don't you introduce yourself and let us, the public, know where you are in school and so forth, and then onto the slides.
All right. Yeah, so I'm Everett. I'm a senior at the Hamilton Wenham Regional High School. As Cedric said, pretty much what I was going to. We are a club at the high school, and on behalf of that club, I'm advocating for this policy of reading land acknowledgements. So I want to begin by giving an example of this, which is what we would do at the start of meetings. We all live on Indigenous land. We would like to begin by acknowledging the Massachusetts tribe, the tribe of Indigenous peoples from whom the colony, province, and Commonwealth of Massachusetts have taken their name. We would like to pay our respects to the ancestral bloodline of the Massachusetts tribe, their descendants, who still inhabit historical Massachusetts tribe territories to this day. And this is the statement that we got from the vice president of the Massachusetts tribe. So that is a land acknowledgement, but a more formal definition from the MCNAA, the Massachusetts Center for Native American Awareness, is that these are simple and powerful ways to show respect to the original inhabitants of land where we are standing, presenting, or doing an activity. The MCNAA believes this is a meaningful step towards honoring the truth, making the invisible visible, and correcting the American stories that erase Indigenous peoples' tribal history and culture. So it's something that we would read saying, this was originally Massachusetts tribe land and we are residing on it, but that is its history. And that quote got into one of the reasons this is so important, because Native people are very rarely out in the history books outside of their land being taken or interacting with colonists in some way, maybe like, helping out the Pilgrims for Thanksgiving, as the story goes. It's really easy to think that this is all in the past, when in reality, the Massachusetts tribe still exists and they are here. They're still in the state and people are still around. And this is also, it's also a tragic history that shouldn't be erased, just like we don't want to forget other tragedies of the past, like the Holocaust or 9/11. It should never happen again, because there was so much culture erased, people were killed, people were displaced. And also, this is important because this reflection can inspire action. Every time you take a minute out of your day, if you are leading a meeting, you can read the statement and think about this and think like, are you doing anything to help Indigenous people? Or also, it would teach people, because many people they don't even know about the concept of land acknowledgements. So if they come to a meeting and hear one, they would learn what that concept is. And it's also a direct connection to local history. I know this is Wenham, but Masconomet is buried in Hamilton, which is very close by. I'm not going to read all of these, but there are a large number of places just within our own state that have adopted this policy. It's very common in places like Canada or New Zealand or Australia, where there's also been a lot of, most of the residents and most of the government is not the original residents, but even within the United States, this is becoming more popular, and it's even within our own state and within our area, people are taking this policy up, especially in schools and in places like Salem, Winchester, and Great Barrington. So this is the same presentation for Hamilton, Wenham, and the schools. So not all of these are strictly applicable, but the requests that we were advocating for are physical markers on the town halls, so people know where we're located in more ways than one. Same with the school district and town websites. The town website would hopefully have something where people, if they're trying to learn where we are, they know the history of our land a bit more. And as well, we would have plaques at Pingree and Patton where we are. That's one place that people really think about land more often, like running around on a field. You think about it more than if you're just living in your home. And we would also be reading that acknowledgement like I did before gatherings and large events. So for the town, that would be like a town meeting, or also civic events like Veterans or Memorial Day. And virtual events are included because most people are zooming in from Massachusetts territory, and even, that's where we conduct our business, even if we are not physically in the same room together. And funding will be provided by the Social Justice Club. That's all.
All right, thank you, Everett. Looks like you've been doing quite a bit of work on this, and Anna as well. Catherine, any comments?
I just want to thank Everett very much. I think this is going to certainly be an issue, a topic that's going to be worthy of more conversation, especially if we're talking about adopting policies. I think it's, like so many other things, human rights, a little complicated, and I would want to be sure we were being as equitable as possible, because that is sort of what the idea is, right? So I think they're, as I said, to be comprehensive, and as we think through a policy in Wenham, it would be my suggestion to encourage folks that might also be interested in particular policies around their underrepresented groups, that we maybe, I'm not sure how we do this, but gather some kind of a roundtable. These are really important issues, and I think they should be looked at together and understood in their context. And if there are policies that we can adopt, I think that's probably the way to go with it.
Thank you. So certainly we'd like to hear from the public on this and see what support there is, or as you say, on other groups that might want to participate on this. So we'll continue this conversation. And I think once we have a full quorum on the Board of Selectmen, that we can go forward and look at this as a policy, along with many other things as well.
I agree, Gary.
Gary, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Thank you very much for both of your time, and thank you to Everett for awesome presentation. I had a question for Ms. Harrison. So in terms of equitable, which I think everyone knows is something that's really important to me, the only question I sort of have for you is part of the uniqueness of the land acknowledgement process is recognizing that Indigenous history is unique in a sort of very different way than other types of marginalized groups. And so I think that there is sort of room for that conversation to happen, but I do think there's a uniqueness to land acknowledgement onto itself that I just want to sort of note for the record, because there's no other population that was here for upwards of 10,000 years and then displaced. Like, that's a unique history among many other unique histories. So I'm all about process and deliberation and all of that. And I think Gary is right that there needs to be some public comment, but I would just encourage the board to consider, the initial ask is relatively simple and sort of more of a statement of acknowledging as opposed to something grander. So I don't know if Everett has other thoughts about what's been unique about this sort of process of discovery and recognizing the differences between and among marginalized groups. Just wanted to sort of throw that into the conversation.
All right, thank you, Anna. All right, thank you, Everett. All right, moving along then, what's up next, Jackie?
Oh.
Yes. Important one up, the vice chair.
Yeah, so if I may, and this is not, I think this is more of a question than anything else. I know that after we have 3 members and after the election, we will, as we always do, have a reorganization and, elect a chair and vice chair and a clerk. It occurred to me, and this is really a question that we probably may not be able to answer tonight. I know the difficulties that have occurred where there just being one person, Gary, on the board. And you've been, amazing in dealing with those. So I guess my question comes down to the fact that does anyone or could anyone imagine, and this I think would probably only be pertinent maybe for town meeting, anyone imagine a need for a vice chair? We have a chair, obviously, for a vice chair before the general election and the reorganization after the general election. And I'm not, this is not a power play. I just have a question about that. It just occurred to me. I think one of the draft contracts we had assigned for, I think, a chair and a vice chair. So I don't know, does anyone, I guess this would be for Tom or Gary or anyone know if there's any potential need for that position before whenever the election meeting after the election is?
Well, I think we looked at this quite a bit
Okay.
in January going forward with Lauren, our town council. So yes, I'm supportive of a vice chair, especially if the vice chair likes to do paperwork. But I mean, there is the possibility of absence or possible conflict of interest on some issue coming up. Certainly, with the WVIS was potential with their other candidates might have been in conflict there, or the Wenham Museum other participation. So if Tom, if you want to add anything in here, but otherwise I think we can lead to a vice chair.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, I'm a very big structure person, and to have the structure in place here, because between now and the election and going forward, you don't know what may happen. So it's always good to have this. And once your third member comes on board in May, you can structure it how you may please. But I'm fully supportive of you adding a vice chair at this time.
All right. Well, let me make the motion then. I nominate Catherine Harrison to be the vice chair of the Wenham Board of Selectmen. Do I hear a second?
I will second that.
All right, and the roll call vote?
Gonna make me vote for myself first.
Yes, yes.
Catherine, yes, I'd be happy to do that for the time being.
And Gary, yes. I didn't want to lose that vote, or just in case, right?
In case I changed my mind. I'm not anticipating or hoping to have to do anything with this particular title. So just because
that's good to have that in place just in case if anything occurs between now and the 6th of May.
Right.
Right.
And
the
next item, actually, I think is kind of, they could really have been one question, one item. A couple of questions came up in terms of our processes, some of which I I realize we're way too close to having 3 members to bother talking about now. But I did want to just offer up a couple things. I know, as I said, Gary, you've been doing a yeoman's job here, and I wanted to tell you that just for the few meetings we have between now and when we have a new group, I am happy to take a look at the minutes or be the clerk in the next couple of weeks, if that's something that will help you in any way or just relieve you of having to do something, just offering it up. I don't think that's really, well, it will be an elected position, but I think at this point it's just, I'm happy to help. There was one other thing. I think that was the most important thing. I had some questions about, how we were going to make motions and a few other procedural issues. But as I said, I began to realize that we're only about 3 weeks or 4 weeks away from having a full board. And I would highly recommend at that point in time that we do put on the agenda something to do with what our best practices for operations are. Just how do we want the meetings to proceed? But
Yeah, certainly over the last 3 months, I've had a lot of conversations with Tom, and certainly we've looked at the Board of Selectmen handbook, the town employee handbook, and so forth. And I think we have quite a lot of work to do to both bring those up to date and for the eventual 3 of us to determine how we want the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator to interface and work going ahead. So yeah, let's plan to get the 3rd select member on board. That probably a week or 2 after that will already have been reorganized, and then we can take the dive into actual procedures and how we want to rewrite the policies for the select board.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. And as I said, if you'd like any help with the minutes, just let me know.
All right, so
Happy to do that.
so
But you can-
Catherine Tinsley, Catherine Harrison is your new destination for minutes then.
That was quick.
That was quick.
I had a feeling, it's one of those things that you do and it's important. And Catherine Tinsley does such a great job that we really have very little to do, but it's a little bit, tedious. And like I said, I'm feeling for you, Gary. I haven't done it in a year, so
All right.
I can handle a few meetings if you'd like.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, that's all I had on those. Thank
right.
you for.
So next
that
time,
time.
discussion and potential recommendations on annual town meeting warrant articles. So we started through the list last week, and I believe we're up to Article 8 here, which is the transfer from water surplus for sick time buyback account for a retiring employee. And it's to see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of $16,000 from the water department surplus to an account for the use of paying a sick time buyback for the town's obligation to a retiring water department employee. So these votes tonight are for the Board of Selectmen or Select Board's recommendation to a town meeting. So on this one, the Finance and Advisory Committee voted 5-0. A simple majority will be needed at town meeting. Comments, questions, Catherine?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
So for the public at large, we anticipate one employee retiring. We'll need to buy back some sick time. So this is a financial transaction to put the money in the right place to do that. So on our, I'll make the motion that the Board of Selectmen support positively warrant Article 8. Do I have a second?
Second.
And the vote?
Catherine, yes.
Gary, yes. All right. On to number 9. All right. So discussion of potential recommendations on annual town meeting warrant Article 9. This is the CPA Reservations and Appropriations to see if the town will vote to hear and act on the report of the Community Preservation Committee for FY22, increase the amounts set aside in FY 2021 to reflect higher than forecasted FY 2021 Community Preservation Fund revenues, appropriate the Community Preservation Fund FY 2022 estimated annual reserves revenues a sum of money to meet the necessary and proper expenses of the Community Preservation Committee for FY 2022, and further to expend or set aside, whether from CPF FY 22 estimated annual revenues or otherwise, as recommended by the CPC, sums of money for acquisition, creation, and preservation of open space, acquisition, creation, preservation, rehabilitation, and restoration of land for recreational use, acquisition, preservation, rehabilitation, and restoration of historic resources, and acquisition, creation, preservation, and support of community housing, and for the rehabilitation and restoration of open space or community housing acquired under the Community Preservation Act, to include the following items numbered 1 through 6 below. So if we have those 1 through 6 below. So just background, so the revenues from 2021 actually came in higher than forecast. So we'll be adding those into this warrant article this year, but it mostly pertains to FY 22 money. So it's a transfer from FY 2021 CPF actual annual revenues and reserve the total sum of $191,915.01 for each of the three purposes of the CPA, and transfer from FY 2022 CPF estimated annual revenues and reserve the sum of $140,400 for each of the three purposes of the CPA, and transfer and the sum of $319,100 to the FY 2022 budgetary reserve, and further appropriate from FY 2022 CPF FY 2022 estimated annual revenues the sum of $8,500 to the CPC administrative account for the necessary and proper expenses of the CPC for FY 2022 as follows. So basically, in layman's term, what this does is takes the 10% each into the three mandated areas of historic resource, open space, and community housing for the extra 2021 money. What's in the money, at least the 10% for the FY 22, and then puts the others into reserve, except for a small amount, the $8,500 for administrative purposes. So I read that the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee was 7-0, and recommendation of the Finance and Advisory Committee was 4-0. Questions, comments, Catherine?
No, thank you. Appreciate my appreciation to the CPC as always. I watched these meetings, so I was able to see the presentations through the wonders of Zoom, and also the discussion. So I'm pretty up to speed with this. So I have no particular questions on this one.
Right. Then I'll move that the Board of Selectmen make positive recommendations on meeting warrant Article 9. Do I hear a second?
A question first, is this, or do we need to vote on every section of Article 9 or separately? In other words, are we going to recommend favorable action on Article 9.1 and then 9.2 and then?
We have another slide then, Jackie?
So yes, Mr. Chairman. So this is just for Article 9, Section 1, and then we have the 5 grant funded projects, each as separate sections for your review tonight as well.
So this one is dealing strictly with the movement of money into the reserve accounts and the administrative, right?
Correct.
So that's all we're motioning and seconding right now.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So I second the recommendation for favorable action for Article 9.1.
9-1. And the vote, Catherine?
And Catherine, aye.
Gary, aye. All right. On to second portion of Article 9 is the transfer from the Community Preservation Fund, the total of sum of $121,900 for the FY 2022 debt service on the borrowing for the rehabilitation of the historic town hall, of which the total sum shall come from the historic resources reserves. This was recommended by the Community Preservation Committee, 7-0 vote, and by FinCom 4-0. So this is a continuing, and I think we have not too many years left to help pay down the town hall account. Questions, comments, Catherine?
No, this is a very familiar one. We must
Right.
be in the, I don't know how many years so far.
The decade. All right.
Decade, yes.
Right. So I move that the Board of Selectmen support the annual town meeting warrant Article 9, Section 2. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And vote?
Catherine, yes.
And Gary, yes. On to warrant Article 9, Section 3. The transfer the sum of $15,000 from the Community Preservation Fund Open Space and Recreational Reserve for the purpose of the West Wenham feasibility study, including all incidental and related expenses, which project is described in detail in the application submitted to the Community Preservation Committee on January 11th, 2021, such sum to be expended on the direction of the Open Space and Recreational Committee. The recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee was 7-0-0. The recommendation of the FinCom was different at 2-4 and 2 against. Catherine.
This was an interesting discussion at the CPC meeting, and I believe that it's going to be important for the CPC, and I would recommend to them that they spend a little time explaining what this grant is actually for and what this feasibility study is going to actually do, because I think there was a little bit of confusion. You'll see in a minute that when I vote that I'm fully in support of this. Is a very underused piece of open space in town. And I am hoping, and what I believe is that the result of this feasibility study will be to provide options to the Open Space and Recreation Committee and maybe make some recommendations for how that space can best be used. So that's my understanding of it. I hope that's right.
And likewise, I think there was a concern, I would express it too, that we need to make sure that this particular feasibility study fits in with the overall master plan, that this is not seen as a special deal on the side, but that, if the town wants to go forward with a $15,000 for the feasibility study, that we should understand that any further movement on this ought to be within the scope of the master plan when it comes along as well. So I'll make the motion that the Board of Selectmen support meeting warrant Article 9, Item 3.
I'll second that.
All right, and the roll call vote,
Catherine, yes.
and Gary, yes. All right, on to meeting warrant Article 9, Item 4. The transfer of the total sum of $47,400 with $31,567 from the CPF Historic Preservation Fund and $15,833 from the FY 2021 CPA Budgetary Reserve for the purpose of the purchasing and installation of the Wenham Museum HVAC system at the Wenham Museum located at 132 Main Street, Wenham, including all incidental and related expenses, which project is described in detail in the application submitted to the CPC on January 12, 2021, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a grant agreement with the Wenham Museum upon such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen shall deem appropriate, including but not limited to the provision of the town of a 29-year historic preservation restriction in such property, and further that the historic preservation efforts be documented to the satisfaction of the Board of Selectmen, and continuing on, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to accept an historic preservation restriction to such property, execute documents, and take all other actions needed to effectuate the purpose of this vote. Provide, however, that if the project contemplated by this vote has not commenced on July 1st, 2022, the appropriation authorized here under shall expire, said deadline to be extended at the discretion of the Board of Selectmen upon the request of the Wenham Museum, as long as the board determines that a good faith effort has been made by the Wenham Museum to advance the project. Recommendation by the CPC was 7-0-0 and by FinCom 4-0-0. And this one is, if we can condense that whole spiel into HVAC for the Wenham Museum, muchly needed, that the town will require and hold a preservation protection on the property while that is done, and that this will be approved at town meeting. Questions, comments, Catherine?
No, yes, I'll second it. But I do have one question, and my memory may not serve me right, and I don't have my notes in front of me. I think there was one open question which may already have been acted upon about regarding the Historic District Commission, and they had to approve that this was a culturally significant site in order for us to spend CPC money on it. And I believe it was going to be, if I'm remembering, HVAC that covered, oh my gosh, why can't I think of the name of the hall and the downstairs, Burnham Hall and downstairs. So I'm sure that will happen, but I guess just for curiosity.
Catherine?
Yeah.
It's on our agenda for the Historical District Commission / Historical Commission meeting tomorrow night to make that designation approved.
Okay, great. I think that was the only open thing. So yes, I second this motion, and Catherine votes yes.
Gary votes yes. All right, so 9-4 moves forward. And 9-5, transfer the total sum of $150,000 from the CPF Community Housing Fund to the Wenham Affordable Housing Trust for the purpose of the creation and acquisition of affordable housing under the CPA statute and the charter of said trust, which project is described in detail in the application submitted to the Community Preservation Committee on January 11th, 2021. This was 5-0 on the Community Preservation Committee and 3-1 to 0, no abstains on the Finance and Advisory Committee. So I know there was some discussion and some questions as to where this money should reside. Comments, Catherine?
Yeah, this was I had to think about this one a little. You know, I was on the Wenham Affordable Housing Trust as the last time I was a selectman for several years, and I very much appreciate the work that they do. And I know that there's an action plan that I believe they're beginning to implement. So to that end, having money, this is just, where should this money be? There are slightly different uses, I think, whether it's in the trust and also slightly different approval processes for whether the money is in the trust or stays in the CPA, CPC funds. So I understand that the need to be nimble, and that's the whole sort of point of the trust. I wish that there had been a little bit more clarity in this discussion, or will be a little more clarity at town meeting about how much exists in the Affordable Housing Trust coffers right now, and actually what projects they are either working on or literally shovel in the ground, not exactly, but ready to go, that would require this. I know they talked about it just replenishing money that was spent. I would have liked to hear a little bit more, that to be a little bit more fleshed out. That being said, it's going to be money that's spent for affordable housing, so I don't have an objection. I just have a couple of concerns.
Yeah, I'll echo that too, because, you know, we have both committees that have voted a split decision there. And I think at town meeting, both the Community Preservation Committee and the Affordable Housing Trust ought to be present so that they can detail what their plans are for this money and why they think it should reside in one coffer versus the other. But otherwise, you know, it all eventually will go to affordable housing as the part of the charter for both committees. So I'll make the motion that the Board of Selectmen support meeting warrant Article 9, line 5. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, and the vote?
Catherine is thinking about this.
All right.
And
Well,
I've been thinking about it. And you think I would,
okay.
I
Perhaps let me offer something that perhaps on this particular one that just so it's highlighted at town meeting, what do you think that perhaps we should abstain on this and try to make sure that the other committees come forward with a very positive rationale one way or another on how this should be handled at annual town meeting?
I think that's an excellent idea, Gary. That would really make me feel more
Go ahead,
comfortable with
Jackie.
this.
I just want to clarify that we want to retain to be made at town meeting versus a 002 abstention, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the warrant article is going to go forward. It'll be our recommendation that at this point, the Board of Selectmen are abstaining on this issue wishing to have further information from the two particular parties.
And I'm just clarifying that you're not legally voting to abstain. You're going to hold off on voting until town meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, Catherine?
Yes.
Yes, all right.
Just
So,
wanted to be clear.
so
Thank you.
this is,
Good
yeah.
job,
So
Jackie.
technically, this is no action by the Board of Selectmen this evening on Article 9, line 5.
Right.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Article 9, line 6, amend the vote taken under Article 8 of the July 11th, 2020 annual town meeting, approving an amendment to the vote taken appropriating the sum of $50,000 as a grant to the Community House, Inc., located at 284 Bay Road, Hamilton, Massachusetts, by deleting from said vote the words "the heating system," and further to authorize the funds appropriated thereunder to expended for any historic preservation work as outlined in the original 2019 application, maintaining the requirement for a 29-year historic preservation restriction as to establish that the July 1st, 2022 as the new deadline provided for commencement of the project and lapse of the appropriation unless an extension is granted prior thereto by the Board of Selectmen following a determination that the project has moved forward in good faith. So the community preservation, this was 520. FinCom is to be made at town meeting. And I
Gary?
believe this is the one, Jackie, that this essentially, the money was appropriate at town meeting, but because of timelines that the community house had already gone ahead and spent the money for the heating system. Is that correct?
Well, so two clarifications to that. One, this recommendation was carried over from the last slide. So the CPC voted on this article as 500,
All right.
not 520. So I just wanted to clarify that. So basically, the community house submitted a letter back to the CPC because they actually submitted this original CPC appropriation was very specific in scope. And so those receipts were submitted to the Hamilton CPC and paid by Hamilton. So we couldn't pay them. So the community house requested to the Wenham CPC to change this because town meeting had been that specific. So without town meeting voting again, we couldn't pay it out without breaking a vote of town meeting. So the community house submitted and the CPC at that time determined that they were comfortable striking the heating system and making it more wide based on the original community house application from 2 years ago, but everything still has to be within the CPA statute scope of what is historic preservation versus maintenance.
Okay. So the money is already there. The heating system was end up being paid through the Hamilton CPC, so that our money being specifically designated for that purpose cannot now be expended. And we are now broadening the scope on this so that the 50,000 can be expended for historic purposes. That sound right? All right.
Very nice.
Catherine.
Good summary. I just have one question. This looks as if the Finance and Advisory Committee are waiting for town meeting to make a recommendation. I think there's probably a reason. I just don't know what it is.
It actually just hasn't been in front of them yet. So it
okay.
made it town meeting in the way that yours will, is that it's not going to be included in the printed warrant that people should have started receiving over the weekend. But
Yes,
we'll have a handout at the town meeting with all of the BOS recommendations, as well as this FinCom recommendation if they do decide to do it in advance. And we'll put it up on the website when it's available as well.
Because I didn't see any problems with it or reason not to recommend favorable action. So I just was curious about that. So that's my only question, Gary.
All right, so I'll make the motion that the Board of Selectmen support meeting warrant Article 9, line 6. Is there a second?
And I will second.
And the vote?
And Catherine, aye.
Gary, aye. All right, Article 10, net metering credit purchase agreements. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to, one, enter into one or more net metering credit purchase agreements with one or more owners of renewable energy facilities for terms up to 30 years, and two, take any actions and execute any other documents and ancillary agreements necessary, convenient, or appropriate to accomplish the foregoing and to implement and administer the net metering credit purchase agreements, all of which agreements and documents shall be on terms and conditions and for such consideration as the Board of Selectmen deems in the best interest of the town, or to act in any manner in relation thereto. So this article would authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into agreements to allow for solar projects on municipal buildings and for the town to see the cost savings from solar projects through agreements made with the Board of Selectmen. All right, Catherine.
I have no questions. My questions have been answered. I haven't just had solar installed on my own house. I'm familiar with the idea of net metering, and the question that I had was about why this one. And I'm assuming that we're doing this because it's solar projects on municipal buildings, which makes this particular vote necessary. So if that's the case, I'm all set, and I will second. When you make a motion, I'll second it.
So this is bringing Wenham buildings into the future, perhaps, and being a little bit more green. So I'll make the motion that the Board of Selectmen support Article 10 in the warrant. Second.
And I will second that, and I will vote yes or aye, whichever.
And Gary votes aye as well. So we support Article 10. Article 11, see if the board will vote to change the name of Board of Selectmen to Select Board by amending the general bylaws to strike the words Board of Selectmen, Selectmen, and Selectman, and inserting in place thereof, respectively, as follows: Select Board and Select Board Member, and further to delete the first paragraph of Section 5-6B and insert therein the following. Powers and duties. The Select Board shall serve as the Chief Executive Officer and policy-making entity of the town and have and exercise all the powers and duties vested in boards of selectmen under the general laws or by vote of the town, and such other authority as specified herein, including but not limited to the following. Provided, however, that notwithstanding any of the provision of this bylaw, Select Board shall not act to derogate from the statutory authority of multiple member bodies and other appointees of the board and departments under its responsibility, or any other multiple member bodies, officers, and employees of the town. Is there more, Jackie? No. And further to authorize the town clerk with the approval of the town administrator to make such changes to the bylaws with respect to grammar and may be needed to ensure that such changes are properly integrated into the general bylaws or take any other action relative thereto. So yes, this basically changes Board of Selectmen to Select Board. That this is must give credit to Lauren Goldberg and Tom Younger that this came forward in January as we started looking at special legislation and what is becoming the standard across the state. So this article would change the title of Board of Selectmen to Select Board as indicated in the article in the general bylaws. And there'll be a future article to make the change in the zoning bylaws, as that requires a 2/3 majority, and as well as a public hearing and recommendation by the planning board. So we'll get the general bylaws this time and the zoning bylaws next time. Then this sounds like a simple thing, but like everything else is a little bit more complicated. So indeed, this has gone through legal counsel, and that we will have to go through item by item to extricate Board of Selectmen and insert the Select Board in this process. But this will be the beginning of this process to at least get the general bylaws of the town underway. Questions, comments, Catherine?
Gary,
Yeah.
just a note too, is that for folks that haven't had a chance yet, so if this update is passed by town meeting, this change will be made easier for the town because we have now finished and are on the general code platform for our general and zoning bylaws. So just another wonderful support of our new general code platform.
I would have to agree with that. The thought of this, just from a logistical point of view, until I think it was someone pointed out that we could do this easily, very easily with general code, was daunting to me because it's certainly an important issue and brings us into the whatever century we're in. And also, as Gary said, and I saw this, I did some work on the recall provision, and again working with town council, every time we put in Board of Selectmen, town council put slash select board, knowing full well that the legislature is moving towards this and would require us to make those changes. So it makes some sense to me.
And Tom, you're muted there, Tom. Still muted.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
Don't want to have you hear the paper rattling on my desk right now. Just an update to the our residents regarding the zoning bylaws. You can handle that at a future either annual or special town meeting, but I've already done a word search for you, and the board of selectmen are only mentioned literally 5 or 6 times in the zoning bylaws. So that one will be a very minuscule change that you'll have to make at a future town meeting.
But that requires what, the public hearing and the planning board involvement and stuff. So a different process we'll have to work through on that as well. All right, then I'll make the motion that the Board of Selectmen, soon to be Select Board perhaps, support Article 11. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And the vote?
Catherine, yes.
Gary, yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I just could, this is Margaret.
Right.
I wanted to let you know that we are working on updates to the zoning bylaws this year. I think I've told everyone we got the grant money to do that. So this will definitely be included in that. We can change the name throughout that process. So it'll be brought to town meeting next year.
Sounds
The
good.
planning board will hold their hearings and everything on it. So
All
just
right.
want to let you know, we'll include that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and that brings us down to the citizens petition, recall of elected officers, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to petition the general court for special legislation to provide for a recall of officials elected solely by the voters of Wenham, and further to authorize the general court to make changes or form only to such legislation unless approved by the select board prior to enactment, and further to authorize the board to approve such changes as are within the public purpose of this petition, or take any other action that relative thereto. So let me go to Tom first, and can you describe the process that this has already gone through so far? For the public?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been worked on between the citizens petition and town council, which this would generally create is a process to allow the recall of elected officials. That would include any elected board member, select board, planning board, board of assessors, et cetera. The process would be that you would end up creating a petition that you would file with the town clerk regarding a possible recall of an individual. Once these signatures are certified, then you go on to a larger process where you need to receive, I believe it's 10% of your total registered voters in our community. Following that with the town clerk, once that would be filed and approved, then you would set up a special election to recall and elect a candidate to replace the recalled individual in case if the recalled individual is, quote, recalled, defeated. One of the restrictions are the recall cannot be done within 3 months of the general election. So when that person gets elected, you could not recall them until at least 3 months into the term.
All right. Thank you, Tom. And thank you too for Lauren Goldberg for her work on this. So Catherine, I know you may have some comments and support for this as well, right?
Yeah, I'm in an interesting position here as having been I don't know, I guess I'm still a citizen. But before I was re-elected or elected, I was a part of a group of like-minded people who felt that this was important for the town, and actually was involved in writing it. I think I can speak on, well, I won't speak on behalf of the group, but not as a selectman, I think everyone should give Gary a lot of credit here, because we have seen citizens petitions in the past that have not had a lot of scrutiny until sort of the very end, and then didn't have the intended consequence or wasn't able to be voted on. From the very beginning, Gary endorsed and encouraged this citizens group to work with Lauren Goldberg so that we would end up with a citizens petition that is actionable, legal, and also gives the town protection against any potential legal action that could come as a result of this. So thank you very much, Gary. That's not something that is often happens, and I think it made a huge difference in this case. I don't think I have to say too much about why I would be in support of this. I think many towns have the ability to recall elected officials. I'd highlight the fact that this is just for elected, not other officials, and only for elected officials that are voted on only in the town of Wenham. So for instance, this does not apply to the school committee, which has Hamilton and Wenham voters, or the library board of trustees. So yeah, I would encourage everyone to read it before the meeting. I also believe that there's a community member who is working with the town, or will be shortly, to ask for permission to have a one-page sort of simplified handout that could be available at town meeting. Tom, that's either up to the town clerk or the moderator, but I think that one-page thing is in the works. And I'm imagining that one of the petitioners would like to be able to speak to this at town meeting briefly, I'm sure. But again, I think everyone knows they have to get the appropriate permissions, and we go through the town administrator's office for that.
Yes.
Okay.
That's Catherine. I can give you the update that's in progress. I know that the clerk's office got a reach out today. I don't know if Trudy's on, but she did hear from the petitioner today, and we've also incorporated it into the moderator's script.
Great. Thank you very much for that.
And the only thing I would add is, yes, this is something actually really new for the town, that the process has protections, but results in kind of complex. So please read this ahead of time so you understand what it actually does before you show up at town meeting, because otherwise it could become a long explanation as to exactly what happens. So do your homework ahead of time and it will work well. All right, so I'll make the motion that the Board of Selectmen endorse the citizens petition on the recall of elected officers. Do I hear a second?
I will second, recommending favorable action. Yep.
And the roll call vote?
Catherine, yes.
And Gary, yes. All right. So that gets us through, and thanks especially to Jackie and Nikki, I know, is working in the background as always to get through the preparation of the warrant articles. And I got mine in the mail, so hopefully everybody else has received those to the mail this week as well. All right, on to new business. So a review of actions taken January 19th, 2021 to April 9th, 2021, and vote to ratify, validate, and confirm the following: 13 accounts payable warrants 2126 through 2138, and 6 payroll warrants 2115 to 2120. So this is to validate the actions taken by the sole selectmen, and each of these warrants were reviewed and countersigned by the town clerk. So they went forward and everyone got paid and bills were paid on time. But we just want to confirm, ratify, and validate the approval now that we have a full quorum on the Board of Selectmen. Questions, comments, Catherine?
I guess I have a comment on this. I am certainly willing to ratify. I understand the need. This is it has been always been my practice to actually, review these warrants carefully, payroll as well as accounts payable. So I see the motion here, but I'm going to ask respectfully for contingency on this motion. I really would like, I'm happy to make the motion, move forward with that tonight, but I would like to contingent upon my actually physically looking at these warrants And I can do that within the next week. So it's not questioning anything, but I feel like there's been a lot of money spent and a lot of scrutiny maybe on this. And I just would like to say, yes, I saw them all. I looked at them, and my ratification from tonight
Right.
holds.
So
that's-
what's the easier process here, Tom? Go ahead and take the vote tonight, or let the full reading and roll this to next week?
Mr. Chairman, oops, hang on one second. If Ms. Harrison would be reviewing this over the next week, we could just put this back on without the contingency if she's satisfied after her review.
All right. So why don't we do that then, Catherine?
Yes,
We'll get to read the stack of papers. It's going to be a big stack. And then
I know.
roll this to the next Tuesday. How's that sound?
Okay,
All right.
thank you for that. I will make a commitment to make sure that it's they're looked at this week, as long as the finance department can have them available for me in that kind of time frame. As soon as they're ready, I will come in to look at them.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you for that.
All right. And old business review. No, this is Catherine's.
Yeah, Pleasant Pond. So, gosh, Pleasant Pond. It's always such an interesting topic, isn't it? So last week we did talk about this, and I know that there was a recommended regulation or a proposed recommendation. I had then and still continue to have some degree of issue with. So let me back up a second, make sure I understand. So the Hamilton Board of Selectmen has decided to no longer pay for anything having to do with Pleasant Pond. Or at least we're expecting that they will, but we've moved forward assuming that. Is that correct, Jackie?
Now that there is a quorum of the Wenham Select Board, we anticipate a formal notification from the town of Hamilton. But based on the fact that we didn't run the program in fiscal 21, so they didn't provide us with any funding in fiscal 21, and they're not budgeting, they did not budget for it in fiscal 22, and they told us of their intention to submit something in writing from their select board to our select board. So it didn't feel prudent based on such a conservative budget year where we were looking to get to a balanced budget, but we also had still some COVID restrictions on our revenues, and we were being very mindful of keeping our expenses tight. It did not feel that it was in our interest to budget conservatively, to include that income from them, because then it would create a deficit that we knew was likely to occur. So we did not budget for it for that reason.
Okay. So I completely understand the, fiscal need to make up some of those expenses since they will be paid completely from, Wenham from sticker users, parking sticker users, not at all from Hamilton, general fund. And so I understand the need for amended fees. When I first looked at that, I will say I thought doubling the fees, and there's still a part of me that thinks doubling the fees for parking for Hamilton folks relative to Wenham seems a little punitive, honestly. But I haven't received any input from anyone, Hamilton or Wenham folks, and I guess have had input from a few people and crunched a few numbers, and it does not seem fair that Hamilton residents should not pay an increased fee for their vehicles since their town is not helping the cost at all. So anyway,
for a quick second.
Yeah.
And I think part of this is kind of a trade-off between price rise versus participation. I know too that over the last 5 years, there's been increasingly higher numbers of Hamilton residents purchasing the stickers. So we certainly do want to price them out of the circumstance, but again, we need to make up some of that lost revenue. So Catherine, do you have a new figure in mind?
You
What's
know,
your-
I came to the same dilemma. I think that Jackie, who wrote this memo, came to. I would like to see it be less. I would ideally like it to be more like, you know, $50 for Hamilton. That being said, that's money that the Wenham taxpayers are going to have to subsidize. So, and I don't know, to your point, Gary, I don't know where the trade-off is. I believe that $100 a sticker, we may see very, very, very few Hamilton folks buying stickers. But I think what Jackie was saying in her memo is that I couldn't come up with a number. It's just like pulling a number out of the air.
So right now,
So-
let me jump in then again. Tom,
Yeah, please.
Tom, you got any input?
Thank you. This is more on the research that Jackie worked on this, and she came back to me with that. This is a unique situation because communities I've worked in that have a seasonal parking pass for waterfront or beach or ponds, we could not really find another community that offers a season pass to another community. One day passes, yes, but not a season pass. So there really wasn't a history for us to work with. And the fact that Hamilton, and we enjoy working with them on various projects and such, is not putting any funding toward the pond at this point. So all the funding is literally coming from the town of Wenham. And that's what we're looking at, is to somehow not put it all on the community, on the town of Wenham to pay for the pond, while Hamilton we're still going to allow Hamilton residents, but there was not going to be any supplement from Hamilton though. And that was the challenge.
So right now then, Jackie, for Wenham residents, we're thinking 20 plus 10 for the second car. Is that correct?
So the Wenham fees would remain the same, which is 25 for the first car and 10 for the second car, $10 for Wenham seniors for the first car, which is 65 plus, for how we count it in the regulations, and then $0 for Wenham seniors for the second vehicle.
Mhm.
So the initial proposal was for $100 for the first car for Hamilton, $50 for the second, with $20 for Hamilton seniors for the first car, and no fee for the second car for Hamilton seniors. So that was the proposal from last week. So, you know, still, I think one thing we wanted to be mindful of when Tom and I were discussing this, as he pointed out, there's no apples to apples for other places. A lot of other communities that have sticker programs for parking like this don't have ponds, they have oceans. You know, there aren't as many programs that are pond and lake based. So that's difficult to compare beaches and lakes. And then most communities don't have one other town that they're highlighting. It's either residents only or residents and non-residents. And I will say that this doesn't mean that a Hamilton resident can't go to Pleasant Pond. It just would prohibit them from parking at Pleasant Pond. So they could still ride, if they're in the neighborhood, they could still ride their bikes, they could still walk. It just would be prohibiting the parking, which as we all know is limited as it is. And I know Deputy Chief DiNapoli is on tonight as well, and he can speak to some of the parking and traffic and volume concerns we've seen the past few summers, even despite COVID restrictions. So it's just not an easy answer. There's not, you know, I've come to the select board in Wenham many years now with fee studies and fee reviews. That's kind of something that's been my niche here on a lot of, you know, different departments and a lot of different programs. And this was one that, you know, I did go to Tom and I said, you know, this is a very difficult one to price because there's no way, to Selectman Harrison's point, that we can make up for what Hamilton won't be providing for us. But it also does feel unfair to Wenham taxpayers that Hamilton's tax bills aren't going to supplement this through their general fund when Wenham tax bills are, but they still are going to get the same great deal that Wenham residents do. So it's a difficult dollar figure. You know, there's no way to make up the difference, but at least this would help with our operational costs, which for a full fiscal year, you know, this RFT tonight that the FinCom approved is just for us for Memorial Day through July 1. So we're looking at roughly $22,000 a year from our expense operating budget for the pond. It's a wonderful resource in the community. The police department does a really great job hiring our youth staff who lifeguard and gatekeep. So it's a great resource to have in the community, but we also just have to be mindful, you know, where our fiscal spots are getting tight. We cannot fund everything. So looking to find ways that we can make up the difference as we try to work towards a balanced budget. You know, this is not a budget balancer, but we do, you know, every $1,000 does start to count for Wenham because of how tightly we are budgeted.
All right, then I think perhaps if we look at this as a decision that Wenham wants to continue the operation at the pond, and that if we look more of Hamilton residents purchasing as just a little bit of extra funding coming in, that this is going to be a year-to-year thing that we could adjust the policy. So as you say, Catherine, there's a bit of a guess as to where to start off this. So I'm thinking, you know, 25 Wenham base rate, and you mentioned $50 for Hamilton, because I think that's still a really good deal. I mean, it's not a beach as in the ocean beaches, but I know it's very popular. And I mean, if you just go 5 times, it's just a couple of miles away. So 5 times for $10 a day parking, which is very little compared to most municipal parking facilities, works out well. So I'll just throw on the table 25 for Wenham, 50 for Hamilton, and we can always revisit next year. How's that?
Gary, can I make one note?
Yes.
That we're not looking to amend the Wenham fees at all. We're looking for Hamilton first car versus Hamilton second car, to be clear for the public.
I think, Gary, that's probably a good suggestion, and maybe where I was trying to go with it, because I think what we might make up, we may actually come in with the same revenue, because at that price, more people will buy the stickers. And I have to admit, honestly, and this is probably not, you know, a popular statement, but I'm a little bit known as a populist around here, and I feel bad for that the citizens of Hamilton, understanding the fiscal realities, but the citizens of Hamilton are sort of being penalized by this particular pretty small expenditure that the select board in Hamilton is not willing to participate in. So it seems like $75 for the first car, and I think, I don't know what for the second car, and I think the rate for Hamilton seniors was proposed to be $20 for Hamilton seniors. I think that's what you had originally proposed.
So we'll keep the comparisons, the proportion the same, right? So you're talking 25 for the first car, Wenham, and what figure do you want, Catherine?
For Hamilton?
Yeah, for Hamilton first car.
I think 75. Is that what you said,
Right.
Gary?
I said 50 or 75. So
oh, okay.
Well, see, I mean, it's a guess, but so
it is a guess,
yeah.
And
right.
I actually was going with 50 originally, so I'm going to amend that and
right.
go back to 50.
It's not a budget breaker either way. So let's just go 25, 50, and Jackie, proportionally, the second car would be 10, 20, correct? And then the seniors are 10, 20, Wenham and Hamilton.
Yeah, I actually think on that, for the seniors in Wenham, where the seniors are paying $10 for the first car in Wenham, correct?
Right.
I think $20 for a Hamilton resident for a first car, Hamilton Senior, since we are upping everything a little bit for Hamilton, might be okay, and nothing for a second car.
But, yeah, so I think take the Wenham numbers and write down the line ×2 for Hamilton, and that should make simple math. All right.
Good job, Gary.
All right.
Simplifying that.
So
Now
the
who can-
usual, half hour on the smallest budget item here. All
Right.
All right. And the
A
second
difficult one.
part that we really need to do, right, is to the reserve fund transfer. Correct, Tom?
Yes.
All right.
that is
Mr.
good.
Chairman,
Go ahead, Jackie.
I apologize. Just on that first motion, we also are going to be approving the draft regulations as presented with the
Yes.
the no unaccompanied minors
Yep.
under 12. And just for public clarification, I just want to state that out loud because it's not in the draft memo, but that is included in the amended regulations of the stickers that we had talked about last week.
All right.
Right.
So let me complete the full motion here then, is to move to approve the draft Pleasant Pond parking sticker regulations as presented with the amended fees for the Hamilton residents at the rate of 50 for the first car, 20 for the second, 20 for Hamilton seniors age 65 or older, and 0 for the second. And then move to approve the reserve fund transfer request for $8,500 to police salary expense for initial staffing and expense costs to open Pleasant Pond for the 2021 season. And as I understand, that's driven by the fact that we did not have it in the 21 budget, but to get the lifeguards and so forth in place, we need to hire now so that this money will cover us through 30 June. Do I hear a second?
You do, and thank you for getting that all and clarifying it. So yeah, so that's one motion for both of those things.
Yes, I think the whole package, one full motion. All right.
So yes. Okay, so I'm seconding the motion for the change in regulations, including the unaccompanied minor and the reserve fund transfer.
Yes.
Yes, seconded.
And the roll call vote.
Catherine, yes.
Gary, yes. All right. And I believe,
Mr. Chair?
yes, Tom.
Yeah, it's tough to see my hand on
Yep.
small
Little
screen.
square there.
Being nice, I don't like to interrupt. For the first meeting in June, I'll give a slight report about how our revenues come in through May for the stickers, just to have the board to be aware of, what the council looking for in the first 30 days going forward. So
Sounds good. And I think, this is something that perhaps we'll just have to adjust next year to see, how many we sell. It's a product now that we're offering up. We'll see how it goes.
And the other thing, Mr. Chair, I'd like to look at, Jackie and I have briefly talked about this for next year. It may be possible, it may not be. But in my community, our beach parking passes are totally online. You
Oh, yeah.
can't walk into the police station, you can't get in the town clerk's office. And it's through City Hall systems, which Wenham also has. So it's something to be interesting that we could look into to see if that may be a possibility that you might want to consider next year.
All right. So I did
I'm
see that
sorry to
question.
clarify. We are doing it online and in person this year, Mr.
Right.
Sorry. We're doing it online this year as well.
All right. So I
Well,
saw
that's
that
great.
question come up in the chat room. So Jackie, what's the address and phone number?
978-468-5520, extension 1 for the town clerk's office, or you can call the PD at 468-5500, or you can go online, all starting on May 1. We won't be selling stickers until after May 1st and later.
All right. What else,
Great.
Catherine? That's
I
any other
have,
business?
I have nothing else. Thank you.
All right. Then just going up to town hall today. I hope everyone goes by, sees, that spring flowers are out, and I believe it's the Hamilton Wenham Garden Club has provided the very nice flower vases in front of town hall and decorated the back door as well. So that's part of the contract we have there. But I think town hall is looking very good, and our shout out to Mike Hardy as well.
Great.
Tom, anything else?
I can't believe they got another copy.
Tom, will you also check in with the finance department and see if they have those warrants for me to, or when they will have those warrants for me to take a look at?
Okay, certainly.
All right. Very well then. And Catherine, I hope you can concise down the verbiage on Pleasant Pond and some of the others as well tonight.
Oh,
All right.
she's an expert at that.
She is. All right. So if I'll entertain a motion to adjourn then.
Move to adjourn.
All right. I'll second that. And the roll call vote, Catherine
Catherine, yes.
and Gary, yes. And thank you to everyone tonight for your help and assistance in these programs.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Have a good night.